Hey folks, sorry for the clickbait title, but here's my top 15 picks for the most important books of our time. Starting at number 15, I figured I'd pick something pretty popular. This is Sapiens, a great history of humankind, just states the facts, but is really interesting to read. At number 14, we have Planet Earth by Bob Brown. It's very quick and easy to pick up and read. It's full of beautiful little quotes. At number 13, we have Voyagers by Lauren Fuge. Lauren is a local South Australian science writer and has some really engaging stories to tell. At number 12, we have The Divide by Jason Hickel. I think Jason Hickel ought to be a better well-known name. I think his research and writing is really important for understanding how the world works and how we're at where we are today. At number 11, we have What Every Environmentalist Needs to Know About Capitalism by Fred Magdoff and John Belamy Foster. I think the climate crisis is one of the biggest issues of our time, and this is a good explainer for how we got there under our current capitalist system. At number 10, we have This Is an Uprising by Paul and Mark Engler. This Is an Uprising is a seminal book for many activist groups, as it talks exactly about how non-violent civil disobedience has made changes in the 21st century. Coming in at number 9, we have Slick by Royce Kurmelovs. Royce is a South Australian journalist, and in his book Slick, he exposes the state capture of our South Australian government by the fossil fuel industry. At number 8, we have Vulture Capitalism by Grace Blakeley. Vulture Capitalism is a great book that exposes some of the weaknesses of the capitalist system and gives some great examples of where it goes wrong. At number 7, we have Dr. Karl's little book of climate change science. Dr. Karl currently has 48 published books, and this is his 47th. It's an excellent little guide to little facts about the climate change science to really understand how dire the situation is that we're in. At number 6, we have The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. This book describes how big disasters are exploited to make sweeping changes in politics when no one else is watching. At number 5, we have Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. In Doppelganger, Naomi uses a platform of comparing herself to another famous Naomi who is very different politically, to talk about the ways people are convinced by information that is not backed by good research or science, and begin to believe in conspiracies. At number 4, we have This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. This is Naomi's work on climate change and activists that are trying to make a difference through great protests. At number 3, we have Regenesis by George Monbiot. This book describes the world's food systems, the way they work, and their flaws. It also explores some examples of some alternative ways of growing food en masse to make sure that we don't destroy the climate in the process. At number 2, I've picked The Invisible Doctrine by George Monbiot and Peter Hutchison. This book is all about neoliberalism, which is the form of capitalism that is running most of the world at the moment. Neoliberalism is a very oppressive system, and it affects us all every day. I think it's a really important thing to know all about, and that's why it's number 2 on my list. At number 1, I've picked Less is More by Jason Hickel. This book was particularly eye-opening for me about the way the world has exploited the global south for the benefit of the global north, in the meantime destroying the climate and ecological systems as a result. Reading is definitely not a favoured hobby of mine, and politics and history and protest are definitely not my favourite areas of interest. I simply think the contents of these books are way too important and they affect us all every single day. After you've read these books, or at least after I read these books, I'm really driven to try and make a difference to the systems that run our world. Here are some honourable mentions of books that I'm yet to read but would really like to get into. There's a whole series of books called First Knowledges. The First Knowledges series are all about the amazing Indigenous Australian knowledge and culture. Richard Dennis of the Australia Institute has also recently released a book that I think would be really important to understanding the Australian political system. Reimagining Change is something that the Rising Tide group are currently looking at in order to better understand how to make a big difference through social movements. And I Want a Better Catastrophe is including some humour in all of this really important but very scary information, so I think that would be a great one to have a look at too. If you've ever stopped to think why you live your life the way you do, why the luxuries afforded to you are available, Why you have to spend so much time working to pay your mortgage or rent? The answers are within these books. The answers lie in history, politics, and the systems that govern our lives. These books describe those systems, those politics, and give some advice for how we might make changes to these systems. All this information has inspired me to take part with activist groups such as Extinction Rebellion, Rising Tide, and Blockade Australia. But whatever your capacity or interests, I think it's really important to find community and to support one another through troubling times. A great way to do that here in South Australia is to take part in Sage. When I first heard of Sage, I kind of avoided it. I thought it was kind of a weird hippy-dippy collective. I didn't like the name. That was actually a big put-off. But I think over time, I came to realize that Sage is a really important community here in South Australia and a great way to be connected and supported in a changing environment, a changing planet, and a changing society. So I highly recommend getting involved, read these books, be informed about the world and the way it works. This is a great place to start. Find a community, look after one another, and thanks for watching.